FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is July 16th, 2020. Well, looks like states are closing back down, partially, fully like California, partially like Texas and Florida. And for what reason? Well, we're going to discuss that. I'd like to know your thoughts on the re-closing, the re-lockdown, if you will. Just send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, we've got Lee Wilcox on. Lee's been a member of the FSN community for a while now. And Lee, you wrote me an email with some of your thoughts here. First, you're in East Texas. What's going on in that state now?
Well, there has been so much going on the last couple weeks with the governor I consider it kind of a little Chicken Little here, going back and, masking up everybody majorly into the social distance thing, and certain businesses need to close, or everything has to be outside. And this area, I can only really speak directly for the area that I'm in, which is my little town of White House, which is right next to Tyler, Texas. And there were already businesses suffering here. I'm driving through the city, and all of a sudden I'm seeing there's nobody in there anymore. They're gone. That business is dead. That business is dead. You're talking to people that they don't know if they can stay open much more than a couple weeks. It's just absolutely crazy. And during this whole thing, we were talking about this earlier, I have not met one person that has had this or anything even close to this. So it's to me, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, I do know people who've gotten it. I've met them. And fortunately, the worst symptoms they had was heavy flu-like symptoms. And it wasn't pleasant. She was sick for about a week and a half, but recovered fine. Okay. My son-in-law's brother, he had it. Everybody in his office got it. And he had flu-like symptoms for a week. Not terrible, but bad enough. But the amazing thing was, Lee, that his wife, who was with him constantly, even before he knew that he had it, she got an antibody test and she came up negative, which tells you either one of a couple things. One is that there's natural immunity. Number two is that there's a immune response that takes place not with antibodies, but perhaps with T cells, as they're saying. Or perhaps it's just not that easy to get, even after constant exposure.
Well, it's kind of crazy. We brought out my mother-in-law. She's 86 years old, and she's probably passing away this week. We have her off of dialysis, and she's in a hospice. But we got her in assisted living, and no more did we get her in there, get her settled. She's getting used to East Texas. We can't see her anymore. It's locked down.
Oh, God.
And then it was, well, wait a minute. She's on dialysis. How are we going to work that out? Oh, okay. Well, one of you can come and get her, but you have to remain in the car, and she'll come out to you. Okay. So she comes out in a mask. She goes to dialysis. She's exposed. Of course, you're only supposed to go straight to dialysis and straight back. But, she's getting a little bored. Hey, can we go to a drive-in? I want a milkshake. But during this whole time, I'm seeing all these inconsistencies with people. Like, what's this new one? Well, if you go into a restaurant, you've got to wear a mask until you sit down at the table. Then you can take it off. If you go to the bathroom, you have to put the mask back on. But when you sit down again and eat your meal, you can take it off.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not an expert in virology. I was a biology major, general biology, but I don't think it works that way. If this were a pandemic, it would be like Stephen King's novel, The Stand, to take out the good and evil fighting each other. But I mean, it would be crazy. It would be everywhere. I mean, my gosh, the precautions you would be trying to take. But I see somebody in like Walmart before they got so particular. I see a stock guy with his mask pulled down and his nostrils are exposed. I also see him blow his nose on his shirt sleeve and then continue putting things on the shelf. I mean, there's so many inconsistencies. Oh, you don't have a mask? Well, this time that's okay. Let me see. I don't want to take money. I'll take your credit card because you might be passing something.
Right.
I mean, all these things, when you really add them up together, and we'd already be contaminated. I mean, how is this in the CDC? I mean, in the WHO, they seem to backtrack almost every day. A mask is worthless. No, you need to wear a mask. Protects everybody. I was actually walking out of a Walmart with a gentleman. We both walked in without wearing a mask 2 weeks ago. I just kept going. Funny thing, every man I would see that was wearing a mask, he would see me and his head would go down like he was embarrassed that he was wearing a mask.
Yeah.
But the women looked at me with daggers, like I was polluting the place. But I'm walking out with this guy and I looked over and I said, hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to shake your hand. You're actually a man as far as I'm concerned. And we both shook each other's hand. And I bet for 90 minutes we talked about things. But I found this the most fascinating thing. He goes, Lee, I do woodworking. So I work with very small dust particles. And I used to wear a mask like this. And my friend told me, you need to be wearing one of the, a respirator, because those are really fine particles. They're going to get through that mask. Well, now that this is going on, his buddy isn't wearing a respirator. He's wearing an N95 mask. And he goes, you do realize that you're the one that told me to wear a respirator because those dust particles were so fine, but viruses are even smaller.
Of course.
And the guy was just brainwashed into, that's what they say on the news and the doctors and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I'm here in Palm Beach County, and we've had a mask mandate in place for a couple of weeks now. So if I'm going into a store, and they don't call it mask, face covering, which like I have this thing I bought on Amazon. It's basically a neck gaiter, kind of like what you use for skiing on cold days to keep your neck covered. And it's very thin, fine acrylic fiber, and I can wear it around my neck, and then I'll go into a place, just pull it up, and then when I'm walking out the door, because it's mandatory here and they won't let you in, literally I'm not even out the door, I pull it down as long as there's no one around me. And the whole thing is just absurd. Or sometimes if I got to go into a store for a minute and then come out, I'll just take a mask and put it over my face, over my nose and mouth, just go into the store, do what I got to do, and then, walking out, just take it off. I feel like it's really an affront because there's no science behind it that I can judge. Because other than an N95 mask, everything else is going to let it in. And most people aren't fitted properly, even if they have an N95. And they tell you don't use an N95 because there's a shortage of them and it's going to hurt the hospitals and the medical staff. They're not going to be able to get it. And it's ridiculous. Like Dr. Ted Noel was on the show. He was an anesthesiologist for 35 years. He knows a little something about masks. And the N95, you wear it for 4 hours, then you either have to throw it out or take the filter and put it under ultraviolet light to disinfect it. Nobody's doing any of this. But so this is just like... it's like buying a Prius, in my opinion.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Lumina Gold, ticker symbol LUM on the Toronto Venture and LMGDF on the OTC, is yet another of legendary mining investor Ross Beatty's Lumina Group. It's advancing the largest primary gold deposit in Ecuador. The resource is estimated to contain 16.7 million ounces of gold and 2.2 billion pounds of copper at just $7 US per ounce gold equivalent. It trades at an incredible 13% of its net present value. More good news is on the way with an updated PEA study expected in Q2 of 2020. It has unparalleled infrastructure. There's grid power to camp with plentiful, inexpensive hydropower available. It's close to 2 ports and is just 8 kilometers from a paved highway. Water is plentiful, it's at low elevation, and the closest community, which is very supportive of Lumina's effort, is just a 7-kilometer ride. With all this going for it, it's likely to follow the typical Ross Beatty formula, which means big returns to shareholders. Find out more and sign up for notifications at luminagold.com. That's Lumina, Lumina gold.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Yeah, I see people folded up wad and put them in their pocket. I have a mask. If I'm under something I absolutely have to do, like for instance, last week I had to go to the bank and do a payroll deposit. I couldn't not go to the bank. The drive-through was closed. I had to go in the bank, and literally I'm forced right there. You need to put a mask on if you're coming in here. Fine, all right. But as soon as I get out, like you said, I rip it off. But there are people using the same mask for the last 2 or 3 months. And there is no science behind it. I've read all these things. There's Nobel laureates out there, virologists that have been doing this for 30, 40 years that are saying, it's crazy. These masks aren't going to do anything. A family doctor came in with a mask to see my wife probably a month ago. He rips the thing off and he goes, thank God I can take this thing off. And he's going, the only reason that medical people really wear a mask is in surgery. They don't want anything to get into that open wound that they're working over. They're wearing a mask. They don't want to, have something drop in there that way. But other than that, it does nothing. And I don't understand it. I just, that Fauci, that guy said back, I believe it was in April that, or maybe March, that masks are ineffective. But yet he's out there. We should all be wearing that masks. We should all be caring about each other. People are attacking other people on Facebook. It kills me. Don't you care about your grandmother?
Yeah, well, more people in New York are dying from gunshot wounds than from coronavirus. And, the number of people, the only numbers that matter, the number of cases really make no difference. It's deaths first and hospitalizations second. And those numbers have been going down. Yes, they've spiked a little bit. But if you get 100 deaths in the state of Florida, that's out of 22 million people. You get 100 deaths in the state of Texas, and that's out of 30 million people. I'm not saying those aren't sad, and it's not tragic that people are dying from it, assuming they really died from it, and that's a whole nother story. But the point is, the number of people dying are statistically insignificant. And then when you pull the people 75 and up, and then the people with comorbidities and everything else, the number of people who actually die were under the age of 65 with no comorbidities, it's infinitesimal.
Yeah. Well, you look at this thing, they were covering the deaths in the beginning, but it's leveled off and started to come down. And now they're just talking about cases. And excuse me, I work, unfortunately, right next to a lab, which I know is testing for COVID. I know people are coming in there and being tested. And it's like, when did you ever in previous years go out and go, I don't feel good. Let me go test and see if I have the flu. So naturally, they're seeing so many more people with this. We've got to get herd immunity at some point, right? We lock down, we let people out. Naturally, things keep passing through the public. That's just the way it is, unless like Hawaii. I guess Hawaii was the only one that really, it was so isolated, it was able to maybe have a little better control of the whole thing. But still, why they didn't really think this through, but then when does government ever think anything through?
Maybe they did think it through, and maybe there's another reason why this is all happening. Hey, 2 states.
Oh, well, of course, that's conspiracy.
Yeah, of course. 2 states, Wisconsin, on the 13th, they had 0 deaths. Yesterday, they had 4 deaths. The Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down the governor's ability to issue these emergency undemocratic proclamations months ago. And they were saying, all these people are going to die. The maximum number they had in one day was 11 people who died. And again, we don't really know the situation. You have to analyze the age and the health backgrounds of these people. And a lot of death certificates we know have been written out and aren't really COVID. Like you gave an example of a skydiver, and chute didn't open. Now, who knows if it's true or not, if it's anecdotal. But if you remember, like Georgia was the first one to just open everything up, and it's pretty much open. And yesterday, 2 days ago, on July 14th, 28 people died. The day before that, on the 12th, 5 people died. And really, we're just getting, I think, conditioned for something else. So what's the next thing that they're going to do that's going to be worse? First we had COVID, then we had the riots. Now we have the return of COVID. What else is in their pandemic toolkit?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm more afraid of than anything else is the vaccine. I mean, it's this saying that the vaccine, all you have to do is mention in the markets, a vaccine is coming and the markets go up. Everybody, and that is one thing that does disappoint me here where I live, is that so many people are ready to run out and get that vaccine. In fact, people that have even been in this trial that I've heard that have had adverse effects from it, they're still fine with it because they think I see no history to actually prove that a vaccine is going to do anything. In fact, I heard a thing last week or the week before, Pfizer, they're trying to develop one, and they're predicting that of those that, and this is just those that would take the vaccine, not the entire population, but that at least 1.6% will die for anaphylactic shock. Well, that's far more than have died in the world as far as this COVID thing. So the cure sounds worse, what they think's a cure, than the disease itself. I mean, I think what people have finally, or they're more awakened to, that they didn't realize before, is that people die every day.
Yeah, 7,700
kinds.
7,700 people, and I always give the example. My odds on I-95 here, I call it the highway of death, in Florida, are far worse than my odds with COVID. And, the other thing, Lee, is the whole brouhaha over hydroxychloroquine, which we now know with the cocktail giving zinc and erythromycin, and probably some other stuff, some steroids. They've been able to bring it down, save 70% of the people who were really badly infected. And the earlier you give it, the better the results. This was at the Henry Ford health system in Michigan, 2,000 patients, and all of them infected. And their survival rate, they cut the mortality rate by over 70%. And I wonder if they were giving steroids, how much more they would have cut it down. So they're making like the only choice we're going to have is a vaccine. And I'm really loath to want to take a vaccine for this.
Well, I have many reasons about that, but you look at the drug you were talking about, it's been around for what, 30, 40, 50 plus years? It's got the research behind it. You're talking about a vaccine which, from what I understand, it can take 3 to 5 years to really bring a vaccine to market after all the studies and everything are done. And yet I thought I saw yesterday or the day before, it's being fast tracked. the FDA is going to waive some requirements that were in there. I guess maybe it's animal testing. They're not going to even worry about that. It's crazy. And what's worse is, okay, I don't want to take it. I mean, you're going to have to come and get me, hold me down, maybe shoot me. I do not want to take that. I've seen too much of the Gates Foundation and the vaccines they've done all over the world and the damage they've done to give me something that I have absolutely no idea what it's in. Oh, and plus tag me in some way?
Yeah.
No. But does that mean I can never leave my town again in my lifetime? I'll never be able to travel outside Texas. I can't take a cruise or an airplane or buy a car or what, I don't know, but I don't want to end up in a wheelchair like 500,000 young Indian girls in India. I don't know, but I don't want to take that thing.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's very disheartening. Well, hey, we do appreciate your coming on here and sharing your experience with us. And thank you for being a loyal member of the community. It's just great to talk to people and share experiences. At some point, this thing is going to end. At some point, I think the public's going to rebel against it. I don't know what they're doing with the numbers, if they're legit or not. The numbers have always been in question from the get-go. But we're just going to have to see where we go with this. Anyway, any questions? You want to give us feedback on what Lee is saying here? We would love to hear from you. The email address is kl@kerrylutz.com. The Twitter feed's @KerryLutz. Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. And of course, the home site where you can get your free newsletter is financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Lee, we wish you the best of luck getting through this, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Kerry. I really enjoyed it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.